Welcome to a special edition of the FarrCast, recorded Friday morning, June 13th. And now, let's go to political analyst Dan Mahaffee and your host, Michael Farr.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Farr for the FarrCast. We're having a special edition this morning. Israel attacked Iran last night, all of the nuclear facilities. It was a massive and devastating attack. In many ways, the world is a different place this morning, and we're still trying to calculate exactly how different. One news commentator said they'd heard that the Iranians have pulled out of the scheduled talks with the U.S. on Sunday, and that was followed by the question, I wonder if the Iranians have the capacity to even get to the talks this morning. The devastation in Iran has been devastating overnight, gone to the heart of the nuclear weapons program, and it's going to be significant. It is significant. It is ongoing. And the retribution and retaliatory attacks so far have been muted. Is that because of a lack of strategy, lack of capacity, lack of will, or is it actually part of a strategy to wait and then be more targeted? I suspect that they lost a lot of their capacity. Joining us now, especially in this last minute bit of a FarrCast, is Dan Mahaffee. We've got him awake very early out there in Chicago. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Tell us what you think. What's happened overnight? Is the world a different place this morning?
I think we see a different place in the sense that we've crossed from talking about it to doing it. The long debated Israeli attack on Iran, and this can't be much of a surprise as we were talking about it on previous FarrCasts, and something that been debated for a while. But look, as negotiations hit their 60th day, as Trump had promised, and it took the Israelis about less than half an hour after that 60-day deadline had expired to go ahead and launch strikes. And while I think we see the statements from the president and Secretary of State Rubio distancing ourselves from the military action, in a sense, it does really show that, if Netanyahu was playing bad cop during negotiations, then they're really happy to let them go ahead and carry out this first wave of strikes and be the leverage, in a sense, to get the Iranians, if ever, back to the negotiating table. But the nature of these attacks, Michael, targeting directly the leadership of the Iranian military, the Revolutionary Guards, the Air Force, the nuclear program. These weren't just military sites. They were striking these people in their apartments where they lived. So that will, certainly have the images you see of the strikes on those sites, as well as air defense. I hear from reports that the Israeli Mossad had even set up its own drone base inside Iran in order to attack the sites that Iran might use to retaliate against Israel. So all of this suggests a significant amount of intelligence and planning, but also given the targets they're hitting, the leadership, the nuclear sites, but also air defense. This is following up on previous attacks they'd had that had struck air defense and command and control. The Israelis are setting up now to be able to continue this campaign for a while, for days if necessary. And so that raises those question marks, as you say, about how will Iran retaliate. And there certainly are questions about their capacity to retaliate. So how will that unfold in the coming days? Hezbollah, Hamas are certainly weakened. Syria, as well. So those elements of proxy that Iran had besieging Israel in their mind, those are off the table now. So what does retaliation look like? Is it against the oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia or oil shipments out of the Gulf of Hormuz? That's a major question mark that would have global ramifications. And then finally, what is the nature of this, given that, if you do this, you have to hit every part of this nuclear program, because otherwise, whatever the Iranians still have, they'll be scrambling together to hide, to keep, to use, and perhaps terrifyingly in some way. And then I think the message finally is sent to every other country around the world that is pondering getting a nuclear weapons program. I hate to say, this is a sign. If you don't have one, go out and get it now before someone stops you.
This was a very well planned, well coordinated attack with great and tremendous resources. It's gone far beyond going just for these nuclear facilities, power plants, all of it. There's a report this morning that there was also a significant cyber attack, well coordinated. And as you said, Mossad had a drone base in Iran ready to follow up on this launch. And yes, the ramifications for around the world. Markets this morning are down, but frankly, not perilously, off about 1% on stock futures. That's a bit of a shock and awe, sort of a surprise that we have seen. We've seen bigger declines on tariff news and other things. So this is a fairly modest reaction. The price of oil, of course, spiked. 70, got up to about 78, now 73. We were 80 about a year ago on the price per gallon for oil. We got down towards the $60 level. This is not an outrageous price. Iran itself does not produce a whole lot of oil, and it produces a very dirty type of oil that needs to be refined. So it's not a really valuable oil. I mean, you'd like to have your own oil well of any kind of oil, selling it, and you'd be doing pretty well. But it's not that's not affecting the world oil supply in any dramatic way. What would be the disruption of the supply chain itself and the straits and the shipments and what goes on in Saudi Arabia and whether there are other opportunities to attack throughout the Middle East. 10-year Treasury, which is typically a safe vehicle for cash, as is gold, has rallied. The yield on the 10-year Treasury, 4.34%. Gold is now higher. It got up over 3,400, 3,444 as we report to you all this morning. The dollar has rallied just very slightly, but not much. So this isn't a huge reaction from markets, from those pricing vehicles to which we look and say, geez, how bad is it? Because Wall Street puts a price on everything. Everything. And Wall Street this morning is saying, well, we can deal with this. Wall Street's message is we can deal with this economic impact that we have so far. Show us something else and we'll give you a price on that too. But right now, it's not that severe. President Trump had given 60 days for negotiations. And again, commentator Leland Vitt this morning said Israel waited for 60 days and about 15 minutes before they launched this attack. And it certainly seemed that the president gave a reasonably full-throated support of the attack and said as much as, I told you so, and now you should get back there and negotiate and put an end to this before they come in and wipe you clean off the map in Iran. I'm not sure, of course, how much of that is bombast, but you never underestimate the Israelis. Ever underestimate the Israelis and their desire and intention and will to come in and effect retribution beyond what anyone had ever expected. Dan, how does this evolve? And let's move. We're going to end up here with this report. We'll be back next week on the FarrCast, but we didn't want to leave you, ladies and gentlemen, over the weekend without hearing from Dan. I think it's very important. And some comments on the markets. Should things change in any dramatic way over the next couple of days, Dan and Harry and I will be back. See what we can provide that's helpful. And we will, in fact, have guests on over the weekend. So we will be here with you to do what we can to help everyone understand this as it goes along. Dan, will you give us some final words?
No, look, yeah, I think keep an eye on this over the coming days. Obviously, President Trump sees it as leverage to get them back to the table. And certainly, yes, don't underestimate the Israelis. And clearly, we can see from their capabilities. As we've been speaking, I've been shown a social media video. Take it with a grain of salt, but it purports to show Israeli planes refueling over Iranian cities, saying a message to the Iranians just how much damage we've done to your air defense and air force that we can openly refuel our planes over your country is a pretty clear statement of how confident they feel at this point.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, Israel has launched an attack on Iran. long waited, long promised, long considered, and it has done extensive damage. And the damage is ongoing, not only to the facilities, but to military leadership, chain of command, communication capabilities. This is a well planned, very thorough, and devastating attack on the nation of Iran. Their ability to respond is somewhat in question, though it would be foolish to underestimate their ability ultimately to cause havoc in that region. So we'll be following, Harry will be following, Dan, others, and we will be back to you when we can. Thanks for listening. We hope this has been helpful to you. This will bring us to the end of this special report for the FarrCast on the 13th day, Friday, the 13th of June. I'm Michael Farr. We'll be back to you soon.
Thanks for listening to this special edition of the FarrCast, and thanks to our guest, Dan Mahaffee. We'll be back with you next week with a regularly scheduled edition, and, as events warrant, we may have another special edition coming to you. Until then, take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. I'm producer Harry Jennings, and thank you for listening to the FarrCast. Farr, Miller & Washington is a group comprised of investment professionals registered with Hightower Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Some investment professionals may also be registered with Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. All information referenced herein is from sources believed to be reliable. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC have not independently verified the accuracy or completeness of the information contained in this podcast. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates make no representations or warranties, expressed or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information or for statements or errors or omissions or results obtained from the use of this information. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates assume no liability for any action made or taken in reliance on or relating in any way to the information. This podcast and the materials contained herein were created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of the authors and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice. This material was not intended or written to be used or presented in any way to any entity as tax or legal advice. Clients are urged to consult their tax and/or legal advisors for related questions.